Okay, good morning, everybody. It is early, and so I appreciate those of you that have actually made it live. I don't expect many of you to. As I say, the recording will be available. Hey there, Jordan. Hope you're good. Um, yeah, I've just had to nail a cup of coffee, so probably be a bit hyped to get through it. But let's just jump straight into whether or not we think Bitcoin is actually in trouble. We have closed below 100K. First time we've done that in 191 days, which might send some people on edge. And you look at sentiment across the board, you have a look at fear and greed index, whatever you want. It does feel incredibly low. And with that sentiment in mind, I think the real question is Bitcoin actually in trouble? Short term, medium term, long term? Well, let's just rule long term out. No, Bitcoin's not going to zero. We'll be absolutely fine. And I don't think anyone that bothers to tune in at 8:45 on a Friday morning seriously thinks that Bitcoin long term is in trouble. But we're not necessarily worried about that. We're more thinking about the here and the now and sentiment where we find ourselves. And it's hard. It is hard at the moment to just be like, it'll be fine. We're going to move back up. And I understand the desire, I suppose, to look on the bright side and think, yeah, we're going to bounce back. It's absolutely fine. But let's not kid ourselves. We are $30,000. That's right, $30,000 down from our all-time high. Let me just double check the maths there. Well, from low to low, 30,220. And it's only taken us 5 weeks for that to fall. Now, that's a 25% drop, not necessarily the biggest drop or most sudden drop we've seen even in this bull run, and we'll have a look at compare some of those. But actually, we shouldn't be trying to just completely defend it. We've got to acknowledge the position we find ourselves in, evaluate it wherever we are, and try and take it from there. And I've blown up Bitcoin's chart. It's on the daily time frame. This is the one I usually use on the 3-day time frame. So this is what you'd normally see. And you can see these are the yellow ones are the lines we drew probably a week ago. The white ones that have been there for a while. Obviously, we lost that 101 level, and then there was a 98 level, which we were trying to sort of take the tops of this right-hand side, which I think you can see, yep, and where this wicked down to in June. We have, again, lost that, and we currently find ourselves sitting in around about 97,000 at the moment. The next real key level, and I think this is our absolute, we really got to maybe reevaluate some things, is that 93 level. I think there's some people have talked in Discord about it, but you're right. There's definitely some previous price action there, which we can build a level of support from. Now, you could argue that 98 wasn't a particularly big piece of support, but the 93, we can have a look back in May, and then also in and around the Trump pump and the inauguration shenanigans before the tariff drop. There was a pretty clear double top on the side here with a fairly decent neckline, and that's the neckline we're looking to try and readjust. I'm not going to bother diving into some of the other charts. I think we can have a look at those now. I do just want to kind of draw your attention very quickly. I know we can more cover this on a Tuesday, but I think it's worth just trying to build a picture of perhaps where we are, because we even discussed this briefly on Tuesday. We were expecting the US government to open, which it has now opened. I don't know what time it would be, but yesterday, Wednesday night, wherever you're in the world, to balance that out. And even I was thinking, that's great. We should see some renewed confidence in the market. And even if it's short-lived, we'd expect to see a pump. But even when they announced that they were opening, they gave us an absolute kick in the teeth with the fact that actually some of the key data that we rely on has been lost and will never be recovered. CPI, jobs data. And that has upset the market. Now, I might be trying to find an excuse, but you've got to remember that the financial markets is just a big confidence scheme, isn't it, at the end of the day? And they utilize data, as accurate data as they possibly can, to try and build confidence in the market. And two of the biggest ones out there are US jobs data and the CPI. And for them to just turn around and say, we don't have it, we're probably never going to have it, you just have to go off old data, does not provide the confidence that investors seriously need. And the reason I'm showing this Forex Factory chart here is the last time we got CPI data was Friday, October the 24th. That data itself was 9 days late, and also came with a little asterisk to say, might not be that accurate because the government was shut down. So the actual last time we had confident, reliable data we're going to go back into September. We're talking about the August CPI information, really, which, what's this? Where am I? That's UK. So we're still 7th. The 7th, but the 11th of September was the last time we got it. So 2 months ago. And you can now understand why, actually, they're just, what is it that we're basing our estimates on right now? So we've got to take that into account. And we're now going to have to wait. I can't be bothered to scroll all the way back through, but we'll get some jobs data at the end of the month, beginning of December. But CPI data doesn't actually come out till the 10th of December, which actually is the exact same day that the federal fund rate is announced. So could be a bit of an interesting time there. We'll use some other sort of smaller data, PMI and all this other stuff to try and help build that picture. But the two big ones we're not really getting for another couple of weeks, which again is not going to put us in a good position. Across the board, we're looking at pretty much reds across the board. As I say, fear and greed's 22 here on the actual alternative me. It's down at 16. Actually, an improvement from yesterday of 15, but still sentiment looking pretty dire. And in terms of sort of the main charts that we kind of start to look at, I don't want to dwell too much time on this one, but we fell through the 100K. We'd already eradicated this block here. Don't worry about it. It's this one here, and we just wiped it out on this morning's candle. We're starting to bounce back through it, and we can now suddenly see. I mean, I've had to, these ones here, it's not been on my chart for so long, I've had to actually pull them along that because they're ones that we do need to seriously consider. And I think the areas that we want to be looking at, let's just get rid of a few of these just so we can give ourselves a little breathing room and you're not looking at too much data there. We've really got to be focusing on 94K for the 1.618 of this long-term fib level. Trust me, it has worked the whole time, so I'm not ignoring that level. 94,200, let's call it. And then that 93K is actually kind of this 93K that we talked about here is the top of this massive bit of liquidity that's been there since June. Okay, so yes, okay, maybe we just tip it and bounce back through, but if, and I'm just going to use the if right now, if we do get into this one, I actually see us spiking in, eating quite a bit of this. I can't see the market makers just turning it around there. They're going to eat into some of this. Maybe not all of it, eat into it and come through. But right now, 94, and then we can have a look at this block here. And you think sentiment's bad at just under 100K. Imagine what it's going to feel like down at 90K. This is going to be where we were, either you were, if you were around in 2021, sort of that May, June time, 2021, 64K down to 28,000, or for those of us that are around in the tariff time of this year, going down to 74K. That kind of level of sentiment, I think, is where we're going to find ourselves. And then we look on the weekly time frame, and we've got 2 days, 2.5 days to go with this one. But you can actually see we've lost the 50 EMA, which you know is my caveat. And this trend line, we are just peeking through the bottom of it. Now, for those of you that watched on Tuesday and have seen a few of these, you know let me get rid of this white line, it's a bit messy. We do peak through the 50 EMA, okay? And that's why we don't react as soon as we go through it. We need a couple of closes. That's difficult because at the rate we've been falling, it could be 85K before we realize where we currently find ourselves. But that's how we try, well, certainly how I try and use it as an assessment. So we're not jumping the gun yet, but we are just looking at the position we found ourselves. And that's why I'm sold, I'm not selling, but I'm also at the same time saying to myself, we should be prepared at least. You know, I want this bull market, like everyone, to continue. Of course I do. Some of the data we're seeing is suggesting that maybe I need to be prepared for that not to happen. And that's absolutely fine. We will make those decisions when we've got more information, but I'm starting to build up that information. I'm starting to take it seriously because key trigger events are happening. We lost the 100K. We're losing the 50 EMA. We've broken through this major trend line of the entire bull run. There's things here which we have to just accept. And not to put too down a point on it, I've been in 2 blow-off peaks, so this will be my 3rd, whenever it happens, if it happens. And every single time, people have always thought it's going to go higher for longer. And I've been one of them too. So this time I'm just coming at it a little bit more, I don't know, reticent. Maybe that's the right term. Cautious, certainly, with where we find ourselves. And I'm not trying to do anything too risky too soon. If we put this onto the daily time frame, I will use the other charts in a moment. I just want to try and keep this chart as clean as possible. Maybe try and find a little bit of opium in there. We'll just go simple support and resistance lines at the moment. There's definitely some sort of line here. I don't know if you want to connect wicks or bodies. I'm going to stick to bodies. But we can kind of see since the all-time high, we've come down. We've sort of hit this line 4 occasions. Well, actually, if you count all of these, we've hit this line 7 occasions now, and we come back through it. So whatever move we're going to get, and don't kid yourselves, right? We are. I mean, I'll go and get it up in a minute. But in terms of sentiment, in terms of the RSI, in terms of the MACD, we're going to be at rock bottom. Even if it's only for a relief, we are going to expect some recovery, some bounce. It's not always straight up, and it's certainly not always straight down. But the point is that even if it's today, of course, it's the same color. You know, we've got to get through this line. Like, it's just absolute simple 101 kind of like TA. We cannot get excited. If we get back to 104,000 and reject again, that is a short-lived pump. And we've got to start to build that into our assessment of where things are. So without looking at EMAs or FIBs or any other fancy kind of indicator, we've got to get through this yellow line. That's it. The next time we head upwards, you want to convince me, you want to convince the crypto market that we're being serious here, we've got to punch through. We've got to get through that line. I'm not saying to that level, by the way, but just overextend the point of where we need to get to. That is what we've got to do. Now, try and put a little bit of hope on this, maybe. I don't know. There's definitely something. I don't know where. Let me try and draw it a little bit better. I don't think that's probably the best spot for it. Maybe off this one and bring it up. But I'm just saying that we can probably connect, though. It'd be great if we could have connected it to there, but we can't. But certainly, we can say there's some sort of channel here in which we're sort of moving in and around. And there's an argument to be had that we've actually hit the bottom of this channel. And so a relief bounce may well be expected. Going into the weekend where it's only crypto doing its thing, maybe we might actually see that. But I suppose we may bounce from here. Sentiment gets a little bit excited again. But if we don't break that, and depending on how long it takes, it's a pretty steep line here. Let's just call it 103,000. Then, you know, what are we really getting excited about? We're just going to bounce back down, and suddenly before you know it, we could be in the 80,000s. And then we will have lost nearly 50% of our value there. So I'll leave that bottom one on as well. Let's just save this so they stay there. I should have put the EMAs on. And we can kind of see where it goes. There certainly has been, if you're trusting in this top trend line, well, seeing it at least, and I think you can give some merit to this. I would have liked this left-hand side to have connected a little bit better. I mean, maybe you could say, oh yeah, well, you can connect it all the way back here and it's supporting this and that. I don't know, but certainly from the move up from this bottom, it's fairly good. I'm going to put it there. The other chart I was using on my mobile, I actually got it to hit all 3 of these. I mean, it's pretty close to hitting it there. Anyway, I'm mumbling now. If you think that top one has some merit, I think you kind of got to agree that the bottom support one does. The fact we have come crashing down into this, and most of the times we come down, we find a bounce from it. So that's something to monitor there. Just before we go on to the charts with all of the indicators, I did say I'd get the RSI up, so let's have a look. I mean, even on the daily time frame, we're down pretty low. We're at 32. We're almost completely oversold. Let's take it down to a lower time frame. Actually, 4 hour, we're just on 30. I'm just wondering, there's a bit of a bullish tiny bit of a bullish divergence here, in that if you look there, the low on the 4th of November was down at 23, but the price was only a smidgen higher. And now where we find ourselves at 30, but price at whatever it was there, 95, so it's dropped. So maybe there is even more of an indication that we're heading that way, but you can kind of see just how low it is. And if we go down some really low time frames, we can see that we are fighting down at the bottom of this. But I don't really use this. I probably should have it in the background more often, but I don't. So we'll take that one off. And then if I just go back onto the weekly time frame, we'll get rid of these lines. And one of the things that I've talked about in the past was just how do we know if we're at the end of the cycle? You know, is there any indication that price action can give us? And well, if we start back at 2017, it's just the speed at which that happened. You know, within 6 weeks, we were down. We were down what, 60 odd percent, 70% before we found a bounce back up. Okay, so pretty aggressive fall there. Even in the two peaks that we had in 2021, it took 2 weeks to get down 50%. It actually took a further 6 weeks to get to 52% of a fall there, and in the April or the May collapse, and then in the November again, before we saw a bounce, we were down around about 50%, and that took about 8 weeks. So a couple of months it should take from peak to fall. We're only 5 weeks into this one, so we could fall for another, you know, I'm not saying that they have to always be 8 weeks, but history said that it can fall for longer. This is roughly around about 25% at the moment. So there's no, just the speed at which we come up on the all-time high is no indication that we have had that peak. And we've seen greater falls than that. You know, 32% this year. We've had, well, that was a peak, that's the base. 33% in 2024. 2023 was the worst. Let's have a look. Probably that's the peak to here. 22%. Okay. And then yeah, what are we dealing with at the moment? 23%. So certainly not the worst. We're the bottom end of the mean drop. If we were to go to 33, it's 85k. That is the same level of pain that we may have felt even earlier this year down there. And it's certainly going to feel pretty painful, but we have recovered from those ones. And this is where we just end a cycle, get to that problem of how can we trust the data that we're seeing? You know, we want to believe, we don't want to be those people that call and move out the market too early, particularly after 6 or 7 weeks of sustained falling. But at the same time, we want to try and trust where the data is. And that's why you will never, unless you're incredibly lucky, pick the tops and the bottoms of the market, because you have to, you know, sit on your hands. I'm not necessarily hands, ride or die it down to the bottom, but you have to wait for a break. And there's, you know, an argument can be made, unfortunately, we have to look at it, that we could continue to fall all the way down to say 83 down to 80k maybe, and reverse, and we still haven't broken market structure. We're still higher highs and higher lows, and that's difficult. That's going to be difficult to manage way through there, knowing that you've seen 26,000, ridden it down to 80,000, starting to think, you know, we lose 75, we're in trouble here. You're only a $5,000 difference. Is now the right time to get out? And then suddenly the market reverses and you're caught, you know, scrambling to get back in at 100k. No one wants to experience that, and that's why we, you know, kick ourselves, hesitate, whatever it is, and we all do it. But right now, I'm comfortable enough to sit at 97,000 and say, as difficult as it's been, as painful as we've fallen, this doesn't feel like it is the end of the market. We are just caught in a wider picture of lack of confidence in risk on assets due to lack of data, due to the fact that we're end of cycle in traditional stocks or whatever, and Bitcoin is just falling with it. I mean, the NAS is also down today, and has been down for the last couple of weeks. So is the S&P. So it's not solely happening to Bitcoin. Right, let's get on to some of these bigger charts. More indicator charts. We'll go through those and then we'll knock it on the head. I think I'll just cover Bitcoin, Tau, and maybe two others. So this yellow line is just what I was drawing beforehand, and I think clone it. This might have been the chart where I saw that it connected all of the dots, but maybe not. I'll have to, don't know why I'm trying to redraw it with you guys. It does look like this one fits better. Maybe not. Okay. Let's clear that and let's clear that one because they don't normally sit on there. It's just going to cloud our judgments. So we've lost this bottom line 101,000, which, you know, we were praising 2 days ago, saying it has held us with support, but we can now see we are coming crashing down. And now that we have the EMAs with us, you know, that journey that we've made down here, it is fairly evident. And whilst we don't like to, well, I like to follow EMAs. I suppose not everyone believes in them. When we look back in hindsight, it really does help to paint that picture. And the other thing is the last week's worth of movement. There's no real increased volume in that. So we're not even leaving vectors in our wake right now. It's just, you know, standard volume coming off. But we came through. We bounced off this 20 EMA and the 200 EMAs kind of knocked us back down, and we're just following this 10, and we've come down. But look, we are extended away from the 10,000, and I can see a pullback happening to the 10 or the 20, taking us that 102, 104 level. I averaged it out at 103, which would have tied in with that trend line I've now just gone deleted. I wish I'd kept it there to see some sort of relief bounce within that. We then start to have a look at the bigger picture of where this could take us. I'm going to have to put that line back in because it's going to help. That wasn't it? Bodies I was trying to take. That's about right. Yeah. Okay. We look to sort of see that move up, and I am sticking with the daily for now. We sort of come through here. We will have to have broken through the 10. We will have had to have broken through the 20. We've got this line in our way, and then we're going to run into the 200 and the 50. And if you look at the 200 and the 50 on the daily time frame, you'll see that they are about to cross def cross. Everyone gets concerned about def crosses. Def crosses in bear markets, not great. We're going to see it fall through. History has kind of shown us, I don't think I really have the time to go through it now, but please do have a look. In bull markets, we'd still get def crosses, and we get them when we range sideways, like we've done 4 occasions in this bull market. The def crosses typically actually signify the bottom of the falling. And if that is going to be the case, and I can't do this very accurately, I'll try and do it as best I can. That's kind of extending out the 200 EMA, and then I'm trying to get the right angle. That's probably as good an angle as we're going to get, but let's just turn that one to blue. That's almost forecasted where they're going to be, which would suggest that actually on Monday, give or take 24 hours, we're probably going to see the def cross happen. Will that signify the bottom of the market or the local bottom? I don't know, but it's certainly something to add to your thought process of we're falling. We have been in a constant fall for weeks. Obviously, the EMAs are lining up with that one. With these two are about to cross. Sell of exhaustion is definitely there. We should see some sort of sustained relief bounce from it. And what better timing to do it than on a typically very bearish TA indicator, whatever you want in a def cross, to make that reversal. That sounds like something a market maker would absolutely be looking to do. So I think that's something to bear in mind. I would certainly mark in your calendars in and around the Monday 17th. Let's see. I mean, we'll be going live on Tuesday, so I suppose we'll know if it's crossed by then, and ultimately where that's going to happen. Something for us to look forward to, if you can call it that. Let's drop it down onto a 4-hour time frame. We'll get rid of some of these now as well because it's going to look weird. 4 hour, we can at least see that we have left some vectors in our wake, but sadly, we've left a lot of vectors in our wake in this fall down, and we haven't really had many opportunities to recover them. But if you just look on the right-hand side, the left-hand side, apologies, there was plenty of vector candles down here, and all vectors below 107,000. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 clean vectors on the 4-hour candle were in our way, and then all of them were recovered in that move up last week or this week. And so we've now left these vectors here, and there's a good chance the vast majority of them will get recovered on a relief bounce. And I'm calling it a relief bounce until we break through that trend line. We get through that 104,000. Anything until we've done that, it's just a relief bounce. But yeah, we don't know how many more vectors there's going to make on the way down, unfortunately. But history has shown us that the relief bounce will target these zones when we're coming back up. And you know, you can mark off and go, right, well, we're the top of some of these as levels that we could consider bouncing from or taking positions on. So there's 103,000. So it's not stayed on that. 101,000. And then there's one really close at 99,000. Very conveniently spread out $2,000 apart. You can have a look at it. By the time price is getting there, we know 4-hour time frame, still pretty decent time frame. 50 is gonna, it's already below the 200 now, so that's be a very snap reversal for that to come into play. But the 50 may well sort of interact with a 101 by the time we get down there, and the 10 and the 20 we can expect will have probably already passed through the 99, because it's almost already there at the moment. It's 99.5 for the 10. So we can certainly signal off those areas that we need to break through again, but we can consider if this is going to turn around to act as a magnet for us. And then, we can't really anticipate where price is going to go beyond those. And there's no rule of thumb to say it'll take out all three or it'll take out one at a time. They're just targets that we need to mark off on the right hand side of your scale as, right, okay, we've hit that. Now let's have a look at what price is actually doing. Can we see it sustaining itself, or is this a point where it's going to roll over? And we've also got to bear in mind, as it's coming up, they may well make candles themselves, vector candles themselves, for it to come back down. I'm going to dread doing this, but I won't hit save. Let's just remove the drawings just so we can kind of see that picture. I don't think that the TA looks great right now. Of course, we have recently retested the 50 EMA and been rejected from it. We are making consistent lower lows and lower highs, but at the same time, sentiments in the gutter, blood in the streets, bye. I've been saying that for 2 weeks now. I appreciate. We have seen seller exhaustion. We're pretty much at oversold across the daily, the 4-hour, and the 1-hour on Bitcoin, and we've kind of sort of moved into that trend line that I wish I'd kept at the bottom side here, and potentially there's a bounce from it. I'm trying to spin a positive picture, I think, this morning, because there are times where we just have to throw our hands up and go, please, no more. We can't take any more of this falling. Give us some sort of relief from it. And we have had that. A lot of us are looking at our portfolios and thinking, how have we got to this position? But the market owes us nothing. Okay, so just remember that, and just prepare yourself from it. I'm going to take us on to BitTensor, which I don't think is an even better picture, but here it is nonetheless. And guess what we came down to? The 800 EMA is what we hit today. 320. So I did just see a couple of messages come up, but I will answer those in a second. So BitTensor from 540, we're already back down to 320. Gandalf was surfing the 200 EMA back in, but the Gandalf line, as I mentioned, is 315. I know we popped through it, but it was 315 for such a long time. That's where we're currently sticking with it. And as I said yesterday in Discord, I think it's almost a foregone conclusion that move down to this Gandalf line is there. Although I will take the fact that we have had actually a pretty clean bounce off the 800 EMA. But again, this fall over the last 14 days, or no, that's not that right, over the last 11 days, sorry, not done on the daily time frame with any increased vectors, so it's just been a clean move down. But again, we can see, look at just this confluence of from 385 to 370 in $15. We've got the 10, the 20, the 50, and the 200 EMA. That is a hell of a job for us to get back through. So we are going to need a strong bounce with volume. And yes, BitTensor has defied the market in the past and done its own thing. But I'm thinking just where sentiment is, it's going to need the whole market to be moving. It's going to need some enthusiasm to be injected within that. And the main source of enthusiasm for me is seeing Bitcoin on the rise. Right, let's go down onto the 4-hour. I think the daily is just, if you want to get really sad, the day there's an absolute clean argument here for that, isn't there? For 300, take down this vector. We've come through most of this blue vector anyway. So why can't we sort of bust down here, clear that vector out? And again, if we extend that out, it's actually a pretty decent level, 300 as well. Historically, there's plenty of support there. And so, we get down there, that might be a good clean level to buy. Flushed out sentiment completely for the move down to the 4 hour. And I'm going to use the word healthy. I don't mean that it's good to look at, but kind of it has been a healthy decline. When you think of it, 540 down to 315, you think, Jesus, we lost over, almost 50% of our value in a matter of weeks. And you think that's got to be screaming that it's oversold. But when we look at it here, steady move down, retesting the 50 EMA, breaking down, then we range sideways till the 50 EMA caught up with us. So if that was, if we were in a climbing rising market, we'd be very happy with that from a healthy structure. But it's come back down, vectored into it, rejected, come back up, rejected, retested. We've hit the 50 EMA. I mean, last time we did it was this week. So it's not like we've been away from it for too long. And when you look on the 4 hour time frame, the EMAs are just spread out beautifully. I mean, horribly, because they're the wrong way. But we have just been working our way slowly down. I think we could see, I mean, the 50 EMA, you can't see it, but this is 800 EMA. It's very faint in here. They're on top of each other right now at 375, a strong move up, and then we still got to get through that. We'll all be excited to get back to 370, but the reality is that's only where the work needs to be done, and we've got to try and climb through it. Again, looking now on these vector candles down here, I think that 315 is, for me, that is where we're tracking. We may hit the 10 EMA or even the 20 EMA on that journey, but that 315, taking out this vector here, 4 hour time frame before, moving up and maybe looking to re-challenge. I mean, we could re-challenge the 372 vector on that way down. I'm not denying that, but certainly to think about anything over 400, I'm thinking we're clearing out, gaining some energy on the 315 Gandalf line, and then working through. And we've got to bust through it. I always say it with vectors. We've got to get clean through the 50 EMA rather than just running into it and rejecting. That's how it's got to be done, unfortunately. And the only one that's really defying the market is Zcash. And I had a terrible day trading Zcash yesterday. Ironically, in longs, because I was long Zcash twice yesterday. And trading on the 15-minute time frame, I kind of set myself some parameters like, look, if it's not moved by a certain amount of time, I'm just going to get out and try and reevaluate. And I tell you, every time I got out, it's like they waited 30 minutes and then it shot up. So it was a bit of a difficult day for me on Zcash. I've not placed anything at the moment. I'm just waiting to see what happens. But it's only 1% up at the moment, but 1% up when the rest of the market is green. It was up yesterday. Yes, we had that pull back, but only to the 20 EMA. And since then, it's actually looking particularly strong. So privacy coins seem to still be doing their thing, but it is defying the market absolutely at the moment. Hovering, the only hesitant I'd say is it's just hovering in and around that 50 EMA here. So, what we could see, and I think I'm gonna have to clear some lines. Let me just clear some lines so that we can see it's a little bit better. For anyone that is trading it still, and I'm still looking for trades. Don't get me wrong, but we've had this move up, and we could find levels. But what the point is, you've got that clear M formation, which I think I've talked about before. We've had this move down, and then what's this? It's just a classic consolidation. It really is. Zoom it in a bit closer, but we've had a strong move down, M formation, right hand shoulder lower than the left, a classic move down, vectors through the 50 EMA, come down, we found the bottom, and then what do we consolidate? Where do we like to consolidate back to? It's a 50 EMA, which I admit we are busting through, but we're still within the cloud, and we haven't got out of that cloud yet. And so do not be surprised if actually this is just a seller's relief or bull trap, whatever you want to call it, and we just continue that move back down there, and 360 being the level. I think there's some there. Obviously, if we can clear through the cloud and stay above it, then we can have that conversation. But we're not going to actually break market structure from that till we get into the high 600s. So a lot of wiggle room for that to go with. But if, like me, and you're down on the 15-minute time frame when you're trading because you're an absolute degen, then there's opportunities to be had. And so yeah, so that's what I've was trying to deal with yesterday on that one. Sorry, someone did ask a couple of questions and my camera's in the way. Jordan's put questions for the end, Harry. I've got the TR main on the EMAs with your settings. What are you using for these vector zones, please? Okay, so that is the can you see at the top here? It's imbalance PVSRA. Okay, so what you do is in the Trades Reality main one, they've got these vectors here, but I don't use those. I use this one. It's imbalance PVRA. Let's just see what it is when I type it in, because it might have a couple of them. Imbalanced. Is it? Oh, is it that one? No. Okay. PVSRA. Yeah, it's this one. So it's unrecovered imbalance zone. So it's Theodrac 718. That's the one you want to be looking for. I've doubled that up now, so just get rid of that. Let's get rid of that. And then when you go in it, these are the settings that I have. I don't think you have to click anything, to be honest. But yeah, that's how I have mine. Yours just shows green. Hopefully that clears it up. If not, just message me in Discord and I'll post my settings afterwards and you can have a look at it. Let's have a look at Ethereum. Do you know what? When I looked at Ethereum yesterday, let's get out of the 15-minute. It wasn't yesterday. When was it? I was looking at Ethereum thinking, you know what, it seems to be doing surprisingly better. But I look at this now and there's just no way that, with hindsight, you can't think this was not a foregone conclusion. And again, I think 2,900 is absolutely on the cards. I will accept that there is a potential, although not the cleanest double bottom there. But, you know, we are just led by the EMAs, the price action. It's cleanly coming down. And I understand some of the criticism. Sometimes people send me messages of, Harry, you know, how do you know he's going to get stop at the 10, the 20, or the 50? You don't. You mark off all the zones and you wait to see what happens. And if you go into lower time level, you know, you mark off where the EMA is on the daily time frame. You go, right, the 20 EMA is here. It also ties in with the 200 EMA. Now I'll just go it down lower. I'm like, right, well, what's happened? That's where those levels are. Okay, nothing really on the 4 hour, fine. 15-minute, you look, oh, where's that? Where's that vector gone? That's everywhere there. And we can kind of see, right, well, there's price action here. And we just have a look. And you just do that for each of the levels, but you mark it off and then go down. And that kind of shows you where the day is. And that's just how I do it. But zooming back out again. You can even look back and just go, what, just in terms of history, what do we normally expect? I keep the 10, the 20 on because typically whether it's up or down, not ranging, that's much harder to understand. But if it's up or down, it may get away from the 10 for a couple of days, but it's going to try and work its way back. 20, you may see it go a week, but it's going to work its way back. 50 can be as long as a month, maybe more. But the 10, the 20 are really sort of magnets towards it. And that is generally the case. You know, you can look through here and say, yeah, that makes sense. In up periods, no matter how well we go up, the 10 and the 20 will catch back up and you can just use that. Now, it's difficult when we have a large green candle like this because you wait for the next day and this is going to massively move, but it won't stay away for too long. And then when you start to add things like the 200 coming into it as well, you just think, well, actually, look, as this has come back, as it's been away, it's coming back for the 10. The 200 is what's knocking it down. It may wick through, but it's the 200 that's holding it. And I'm waiting for it to break that, right? And I go, right, well, it's broken through that close. So in the daily, you have to wait every 24 hours for that. I go, right, well, it's actually closed above it. Can we now get to this next level? And we haven't. You know, we've been knocked back down. And because the 200 has knocked us down as well, I don't feel we need to get back to the 50 EMA, in inverted commas, that our market owes me nothing anytime soon. And so actually, the more logical suggestion from this is, we even wicked up yesterday to the 220 EMA, not back down. And whilst we are fighting it, that 800 EMA down here for me seems to be that next level, not to mention the fact that it's sub 3000 psychological level, etc., etc. So that's kind of where I'm seeing that. I don't follow too many alts anymore, as you know, so I don't know how well some of the other ones have been doing. But look, last 24 hours Zcashes. I mean, we take out stable coins. We've had 3 out of the top 100 which have been green. I mean, it's not always the most accurate, but it's pretty accurate. There's no other ones that are nesting in there. So it's not been good across the board. Bitcoin dominance, having a bit of fun and games in and around that 50 EMA. I still think it's building itself up. And remember, this can still climb even when price is falling. Just Bitcoin won't fall as hard. But if we want to interrogate it a little bit further, we've had a couple of moves up with rejections from the 200 EMA, but each time the 50 has gone on cause. And we're just doing that. Now, I mentioned this on Tuesday. Previously, this was fairly straight going up. We are starting to see that curve there, which is kind of typical with a potential rollover. And I will monitor that. But for me, you've got to lose a 50. We've got to lose a cloud. So we need to be getting down to sub 59.5%. And then we can start to entertain that. But even if we did, and this would be an alt season, don't get me wrong, but we haven't, the entire cycle, we haven't broken the 800 on the daily time frame. So that's 58%. So we're only talking about 1.5% fall. Trust me, that'll do a lot for our tokens. But yeah, that's kind of where there's a vector down there, but I'm not entertaining that unless we lose this 50 EMA. I think I've been fairly consistent on my thoughts on Bitcoin running wild for a little bit longer. Yeah, all the totals are going to look rubbish because the market is not looking very good either. VIX is climbing. So the VIX is climbing and it's not high enough to get excited, but it has jumped today. Oh, you can't see it because I've not zoomed in. We closed yesterday at 19, we're now at 21. We kind of want to be getting to the high 20s. When it's high, you buy. So maybe there's a little bit more tomfoolery to be had over the next couple of traditional market days to see this thing climb. Dixie, it's kind of, yeah, hit the 200 EMA, working its way, I would suggest, down to the 50. This trend line down here is the one that goes all the way back to 2008. And it is hard pushed to, just to believe it, because I can't be able to wind it all the way. It's a fairly strong one. And so the battle right now is just 250 down there. We already quickly looked at the NAS. But I mean, bear in mind, yes, we are retesting it fairly quickly, but we've only just come back to correct to the 50 EMA daily time. It's not exactly the worst. Left a vector in our wake as well. Could easily turn that one around. And then similarly, S&P is just working its way back down. There is a potential double top forming here, so we've got to be careful of it. We need to see how we react at the 50 EMA. M formation, right hand side shorter than the left as well. Be something we would like to look for. Gold making its move back up. And it knows no chill. Again, I mean, it's the cloud, but effectively it pulled back to the 50 EMA, and that's just continuing its rise up. And silver's actually doing a much better job of it. Yesterday, I think it just missed out on an all-time high, but I wouldn't be surprised over the next couple of days. Look at that, retest down 50 EMA, double bottom 2, moving back up, and it's a nice strong move. So silver's still looking good to me. And then, yeah, a lot of these really struggling. Coinbase coming back down, back to its lows it was, similar when Bitcoin was down at that level. Circle, I mean, that buy at 129 was not the best for me, but thankfully I only bought $1,000 worth, so we'll just filter into that one. MicroStrategy is coming up to a real big point, $204 down here. I mean, I don't have the tweet to hand, but I was on crypto Twitter yesterday, which is a dangerous place to be at the best of times. And someone was saying that yesterday MicroStrategy was like opened at like 222 with Bitcoin at 100,000. And then in the bear market, it was like, well, it would have been 28th of Feb or whatever, similar kind of value, but Bitcoin then was at like 75,000 or something. So the actual value of strategy stock versus the price of Bitcoin is not quite there, but we know that Saylor's been just printing more share certificates. I've still never invested in this. I'm not 100% sold with it. Nvidia, I mean, it's fallen $30 almost from its high. Still back to the 50 EMA. You could just argue it was overextended up. We've got earnings next week, and you want to talk about a potential indicator to the market that has been lacking economic data. Nvidia basically carrying the markets for the last few years. That could be a very interesting earnings report. Close of play on Wednesday, so around 9:30 UK time, PM. I think that's something to look for. Palantir is still falling. That's through its 50 EMA. Michael Burry, the guy from The Big Short, he put a short on Nvidia and Palantir a couple of days ago, and now he's gone and closed down his fund as well. So I haven't really unpacked all of that, but maybe this is like his housing stock. He's the one that's right before everyone else. We shall see. TauX has been falling. Maybe we come down to $6. Tesla, gap down and falling. It's actually left a little gap there. Not saying it's going to be recovered tomorrow, but the interesting thing with Tesla is these vectors. Right, look at all those vectors right down to the 200 EMA, maybe 350 we could see. And then, I don't know why I've got QBTS. I'm not sure. Someone must have been talking about it. It's on my chart. Don't know. Okay. Bitcoin, how low a target? So for those that maybe have just seen now and are not going to bother to catch back up, I think for me, we realistically can't rule out that 93,000. That is short term, where we can't rule it out any longer. As I said, though, unfortunately, how low could it go? We could still go down to 80,000 and it'd still be a bullish uptick. I'm just focusing on, now that we lost that 98, I've got to focus on the 93 for me, as in how low it can go. But again, that chart. Let's just do that. But anyway, can't bother to redraw it. Or you could just follow this down. You know, if we're going to step down to it, this kind of suggests we should get a bounce today. And again, just to summarize what I said, we've got to see that bounce not only get to this level, which would be about 103,000. We've got to break it. We just get to 103 and roll over. You know, we've got to really be rethinking where we sit in this cycle. We want to break this line. But if you just keep following that down, I mean, we could quite easily get into the 80,000s before Christmas just from doing that. So, yeah, I think that's something. Will you be buying at 93? I said to myself I wasn't going to buy any more Bitcoin. I normally just buy the business Bitcoin, if you will, the beginning of the month. Do I buy some at 93? I kind of feel like I should. The business account always has reserves. So I don't know. I will feel. I almost made the decision that I'm going to stop buying soon because I'm expecting some sort of, you know, end of market. And I'm not saying that could be months away. But yeah, I'll let you know if I do. Absolutely, I will. Right. Other than that, I think we're just going to leave it there. Actually, 45 minutes longer than I thought I was going to rabbit on about with price. To finally answer the, you know, is Bitcoin in trouble? Short term, yes, of course it's in trouble, right? We have had 5 weeks of selling where we lost from 126,000. We're now sitting at 96,000. We cannot look at it any other way than say that has not been a good 5 months. October was not a thing. Okay. And we can get behind Santa rallies and all of that kind of stuff. Absolutely. Seasonality, typically we do see end of years much better, but every time we've talked about that with Rectember and October, that's not really worked out for us. But it doesn't mean it is the end for Bitcoin. And even in the short term, I see relief rallies. In our 30K drop, we've had relief rallies. The point now is, what do we do? Now we know that this is happening. This is the thing. What do we do when we get to those levels? Yeah, what do we do when we crash back into this, into this trend line? You know, if it rejects, do we just stick our head in the sand again, or do we try and do something about it to better our positions? And that's all we can do, is just have a look at where we see ourselves right now, make a decision on it. And you know, where I see myself right now with this bouncing into here and some of the other charts I've shown, throwing the baby in the bathwater out, what the saying is, it doesn't seem like it's the smart move to do, particularly after 5 or 6 days of constant selling. I'd rather wait for some other form of confirmation. And so that's what I'm ultimately doing. Hey, you guys will be the first to know when I decide that this is it for me for the market and I'm getting out. But right now, as difficult as it's been, I'm still happy to ride with it. Right, I am going to have to go because I'm actually off to a forge this weekend to try and make a knife. I won't say to actually make a knife because I'll probably just come back with a very blunt piece of steel, but I got to go in 20 minutes. So I hope everyone has a good weekend. I will be around. I probably won't be trading. I haven't got any trades open at the moment, just because I'm not going to be able to monitor that well. But good luck to those that do. If you are trading, please put them in the chat. Let's have a look. Let's have a look in Discord what people are doing. If you don't want to say what your wins and losses are, that's absolutely fine. Just more, what you're eyeing up. I think people will take something from it. Have a great weekend if you can, guys. I will see you all next week. And yeah, even I'm starting to have to say fingers crossed. But other than that, I'll speak to you all soon. Have a good one now. Cheers.